Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome to Season 3 of Women in the Arena podcast. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and thank you so much for being part of this community that celebrates women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We are celebrating yet another magnificent woman today, so let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for joining me again this week. You know, every week I am completely amazed and grateful at the women that I get to meet and the women that agree to come on my show, tell me their stories, and show their vulnerability to the world. Today, I am joined by Dorothy Kolb, who is the CEO and founder of DK East, and she has an extremely impressive background. She has a 20-plus year in finance and operations. And in media, she has held positions with CBS Sports, Fox Sports, NBC, Script Networks, and CBS Radio. I mean, I'm sure she could teach me a few things. She is also an extremely intelligent woman. She has executive education from both Cornell University and Villanova University. But what impresses me the most about this woman is that she succeeded with nothing because she simply had no other option because there wasn't the option to fail. And I think that we all need to hear that. So it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Dorothy Kolb. Dorothy, thank you so much for joining me today and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. What a great introduction.
Well, you know, you are an impressive woman and you have an impressive background. And like I said, what excites me the most is your story about an ordinary woman having ordinary issues. And yes, people may look at your resume and say, gosh, she's got it all going on. But you would say differently. You would beg to differ. You would say, no, I've had the same issues that everybody else does. So let's start there. Let's start why you were at a position that you had nowhere to go but up.
I had a long background in media and entertainment, and it was a great career. I would not have passed that up I have no regrets about that. Although it did come with its very male dominated, #MeToo situation that I am not, exempt from all of that went on. But about 7 years ago, I found myself divorcing and was, now a single mom of 4 sons. And not that long after that, the last company that I was CFO at, decided to downsize. And I was without a job for the first time in my career and just had no idea what I was going to do. I, could not. And that job, I should specify, was a work from home job. The company was 100% virtual. So I had been working from home while I was single momming it, and it worked great. I was like, perfect. And when that ceased to be a thing for me anymore, I realized that I couldn't go back to leaving the house at 7 o'clock in the morning and coming home at 8 o'clock at night. And especially then, my kids were starting to become teenagers. And I think it's even more important to be present then than it is when your kids are small and your biggest thing is, please don't put that in your mouth. And so I had nothing, and leaving that marriage, I had literally nothing. I mean, often hear of, and I'm not knocking other women who have this benefit, but many entrepreneurial moms are married and they have the luxury of having a spouse who has a job and a regular paycheck and benefits and all the things that go with that. And I did not have that partner and just had to make it work. And I actually started with bookkeeping jobs, which was, I don't want to say beneath. That's not what I mean by that, but way earlier in my career type, skill set. I had to do what I had to do. And, luckily those clients, I was comfortable enough telling them about my actual experience and getting close enough with them that we would have discussions, and they started, oh, is that what you do? Oh, we actually need that. And then, moved along, and then they would refer me on to other clients that were in a similar kind of spot. So it ended up just working out. And I look back now and I'm like, I don't even know how I did that.
You did it because you had no other choice. So what were the
Correct.
ages of your sons at the time that you reached this crossroads?
So this was 5 years ago that I started this. So they were my oldest. I have twins who are 19. So they were 14, 12, and 10.
All boys.
All boys. Yeah.
All active boys in
Sports.
sports,
Yep.
the whole thing.
The whole thing.
And so you wanted to be a present mom and be able to be present for their activities because you don't want to miss that because childhood is really, really short. I've said that many times.
Oh,
It's like a second.
It is. And you don't think when you're going through it, you're like, oh my God, the Saturday morning soccer games are horrible, or, lacrosse practice at 8 o'clock at night when it's freezing out. I hate this. And then it's over and you're like, oh, I just want to go to one more.
Yeah, I can relate. My kids are 24 and 21. And yeah, the soccer games and swim meets are no longer an option for me because they're too old. But I wouldn't have wanted to miss them.
Right.
So you had this you had this new identity of a single mom, not wanting to miss any of that, but you got to put food on the table.
Yes.
You got to feed these 4 boys. So you took giant step backs. Giant step back.
Giant.
You just had to do what you had to do.
Yes.
So you started with bookkeeping. Was this bookkeeping jobs, or were you contract, or how did this start?
I started on Upwork. I went on Upwork, which is a freelancer, website platform that you can go on. And I just, I put in there, and I didn't even, really dumbed down my resume and stuff because I didn't want people to say, oh, we don't want like a CFO controller doing our books, that's way too overqualified. So I just applied for jobs that came up on that. And I got the first couple that I was looking for. And one was in New York, and I'm in Maryland, and another one was here in Maryland. And they were enough to string together on an hourly basis to make it work on a monthly basis for me at that time. But it was contract work for sure.
So still no benefits. So nobody could get hurt.
No. And here's the funny part. So I was, for a while there, I was on Cobra from my prior position. And then we went through a period of 4 kids playing sports, please nobody get hurt. And then one of my clients actually finagled it a bit and put me on, I was a W-2 employee, very part-time, but so I could get benefits through them. And so I did that for probably 2 years. About 2 years. And then, I was like, okay, look, now I went on the, healthcare marketplace, and it's not cheap.
Ooh.
It's not cheap at all. But, I wasn't really comfortable being an employee because I felt like I wasn't as untethered to go off and do my own thing as I'd like to be. When they called, I had to be there. And, when they had office meetings in person, I had to go, and I couldn't just say, I'm a contractor, I can't make it that day. I'm sorry, I have another conflicting appointment. So, I got to the point where I could finally walk. I didn't walk away from that client, but I walked away from that type of relationship with them.
So your new company sort of grew organically. I mean, did you plan on building a company, or were you just trying to survive?
I was just trying to survive. I thought for sure, okay, I'll do this for a year or two. There were so many times that I would start looking up what are full-time positions. I don't know if I can continue doing this. What's a full-time job I can get? And just none of them really clicked. And especially, I have the background in media entertainment. I live in Maryland. It's not the mecca for entertainment and broadcasting. So it was, I mean, I even, played around with it. Well, do we move back to New York or out back to LA? I mean, I, had careers in both places. And I was like, you know what? I really don't want to bring my kids up in New York City or in Los Angeles. Great places to live in my 20s and 30s. Fantastic. But I just didn't want to bring my kids back there at that point. And so I was trying to figure out, how can I still work in this kind of creative-ish niche and do it as a outside contractor. And that turned into this fractional CFO work that I do.
So what is fractional CFO work? I mean, that, you say that, it sounds really impressive. I had to go and look it up
Oh,
to
no.
see what it was. So
It's a sort of, the fractional part is a sort of new term. I saw it coming out, a couple of years ago, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like that. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I am.
that sounds really cool. I'm going to use that name.
Exactly. Because, you're consultant or outside controller, like all of them I was like, no, they just don't feel right. And then I saw fractional CFO and I was like, I think I might like that one. So what it is really is, I'm a chief financial officer, right, for small businesses, and you buy me on a fractional basis, almost like you buy a timeshare, So I work with, between 5 and like 7 clients at any given time. I've had most of them for a very long time, I've had 2 of them for the entire time that I've been on my own. And then the rest of them probably about 2 years each. And I do my strategic work and budgeting and forecasting and cash flow management and all that for them. And, but I don't work for any of them full time. So the great part is that trying to wrangle 4 sons actually played into this part really, really well. Because it's not too dissimilar. Everybody wants a piece of you at some point, and there's a lot of, juggling around and prioritizing and reprioritizing, whose work comes first and whose work comes second. And obviously, I never want a client to feel like they're not my best client, my top client, right? You want them all to feel like that, because if they're not, then I usually am in a position that, maybe this isn't a good fit discussion, right? If I'm not excited to work with someone ever, when they call or email, then it's usually a sign that it's like, I'm not going to give my best work here. So, so it's the juggle thing, but it's working, and they get the benefit of having someone on their team that is in that strategic financial role without having to pay 6 figures a year for that, which is a huge benefit. Because if you think about it, like, unless you're a big company and your CFO is overseeing HR and IT and, all these other things, and they're just handling a lot of administrative work. If they're just doing the finance stuff, it's not 100% of their time. It never is. So fractional CFO, you get that attention and that commitment, but not on a 40-hour-a-week basis.
So you basically took your professional skills and your mom skills and put them to work for you, because isn't that what we all do? I mean, as moms, is that okay? We're all trying to make sure that everybody feels important, and there's only so much of me to go around.
Yes.
And that's basically what you did, is you were like, okay, who needs me? And you focused on small businesses, which I love, because I have a heart for small businesses, because they really are the backbone of our entire country, is small businesses. And
absolutely.
And you decided, because of who you are and the experiences that you've gone through, to focus on female-owned small businesses.
Yes.
Which is also near and dear to my heart, because more women, as you probably know, this statistic is that more women during the pandemic have walked away from their jobs or lost their jobs and became self-employed.
Yes.
Because they needed the freedom, and corporate America, or whatever it wasn't fitting them anymore. It wasn't, or it actually probably never did. Probably never did. They just couldn't make themselves fit into that spot anymore. So they decided, I'm going to go do something myself. So tell me about that, because I love that you took your own story and you said, I have a heart for other women just like me.
Yeah, and it's been, that's I was just talking to someone about this earlier today about how when I was in corporate America working in a very male dominated industry, the women in that industry were not supportive of each other because there were so few seats at the table or anywhere outside the room of the table that it was always, it wasn't somebody helping someone else along the way because they were so afraid that you would take their spot. And so it was very competitive and cutthroat. And, I never felt like there were women who were like, yeah, we're in this together, ever, ever. And so when I went out on my own, my immediate response to all that was, I don't think I want to work with women founders and business owners because they're going to be like that. And then I worked the very first person that I worked with, the very first bookkeeping job is a woman who owns a very successful creative agency up in New York. And she was phenomenal. And I thought she was collaborative. She was supportive. She was always like, what do you need? I'm like, what? What do you mean? What do I need? What do you need? How can I, she literally said, how can I help you? And I was like, whoa. And then the next woman that I worked with is the same exact way. And as I went along, and I do have one male client right now, and he's phenomenal. And Robert, if you're listening to this, I love you. He's always thinks he's on the fence because he's like, I know I'm the last one. But as I started working with more and more of them, and they all had similar stories where it was they worked in corporate America, they didn't want to continue with that for whatever their reasons were, although they all seemed to be the same, couldn't get ahead, male dominated industry, all the things that we always talk about. And they left, and then they got out there owning their own business, their entrepreneurial spirit, going full force. And they realized, oh, shoot, I don't know how to do a lot of things. And usually the last thing they hire is a finance and accounting person because A, it scares them to think about it. And B, they're like so busy with all the other stuff, operations and creative or whatever else they're working on that they never want to get to that place. And I found when I started working with them, they were so I don't want to say grateful because that is just a weird word, but they were so, it was such a good relationship because they got to do what they were really good at. I got to do what I'm really good at. And it felt really good. And it felt, and I often talk to women and I talk to them about the fact that just because you've realized that you want to outsource a role, a position, anything that you're doing it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. And you are lifting up someone else to be in their highest and best use. And you're lifting yourself up to be in your highest and best use instead of struggling trying to do something that you don't like, you're not good at, or you just don't have time for. And so once everybody starts doing that, I outsourced my marketing. I have a fantastic outsourced chief marketing officer. She's amazing. She does, I can't do that. But I had no idea there was a difference between branding and advertising. And she laughs at me to this day. Like, I don't know.
If you want to know the truth, that's a lesson that I've learned in the last year too. So I had no idea.
Right?
What do I know?
I'm like, isn't marketing like the ad on TV? And she's like, oh my God. So
it's like, sit down, let me tell you.
Exactly. So, so these women who are leaving corporate America, and it happens over and over and over again. They're brilliant, successful women in corporate America, and they get out on their own. And yes, they've still got that drive and that experience, but they can't pick up the phone and call finance. They can't pick up the phone and call HR or IT or whoever. And they realize I'm going to have to fill that with somebody coming in from the outside. And same as I needed somebody to do the marketing for me, and I think as we all continue to work together like that, we just all rise. And it's been really fantastic.
This episode is sponsored by Belleville Capital Management. When you need a friend in the small business arena, reach out to Belleville for your planning, lending, and investment needs. A friendly consultant will help you find the solutions that you are looking for. Belleville Capital Management, a friend to small business. Well, I think it's really interesting that, we have traditionally responded that if I'm here, then there must not be room for anybody else, which is a fallacy. And I've been saying that for a really long time. That's the big lie. That's the giant lie in every organization that if you help somebody else, that means there's less for you. That's wrong.
Yes, exactly.
It's absolutely wrong. That if you help somebody else, that means there's more for you too. Because if one wins, we all win. And that's my opinion. That's always been my opinion. And thank goodness that opinion is starting to become more widely accepted. However, these women that you are working with that went out on their own and started their own businesses were in positions where they were the only one.
Usually, yeah.
So,
Yes.
so how has walking away from an organizational structure and being able to be their own, captain of their own ship, how has it changed them? How have you observed their changes?
I think that they feel the same thing that I felt when I left, where they thought the same, that it was going to be a very solo mission. And they realized that when they started to allow themselves to rely on others and allow that help to come in that they had pushed aside for so long because it made them look weak, or that person took their job, or, whatever, that when they allowed that, they actually did so much better and were able to be so much more successful. And I think, all of us who have, whether it's the great resignation now or those of us who did it a while back, when we get out there, it's, you suddenly realize what collaboration really means and what support really means. I think I used to think, oh, support is when you go to HR and you complain that that guy down the hall keeps, whatever. And you never really get help from HR because they work for the company. They don't work for you. And, and so that you just think, well, there's no support in business. And then you get out on your own and you realize that there is. We're looking for it in the wrong place.
And it's also the big lie
And it's also the big lie.
because if they convince you and me and everybody else that you're the only one, that means that there's only one.
Yeah.
That's the big lie, is that if they are successful, and whoever the they is, at convincing those people that are trying to get a spot at the table that there's only finite numbers, that means that there will always only be finite numbers.
Yeah.
So when you walk away from that, you realize there is so much more out there. So much more.
It is. The other side of that too is that companies often, big companies often convince us that we're not worth that much because it's in their best interest for you to stay at a low salary, right? For you to not get that promotion, not and don't even take into account the male female part of it and all that, but just on a very basic company level. And so you go through your career thinking, I have no value because I didn't get that promotion, I didn't get that raise, I didn't get that transfer, I didn't get those accolades, and then you just are so devalued. And when you finally leave and people start appreciating you for what you're bringing to the table, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I do have value? You mean that stuff was good? And you're, oh, why did I hear it was so bad for so long? Yeah, that's another part of the big lie.
Yes, because it's you got to keep in line. You're part of the manufacturing process.
Yeah, and you have to stay in your spot because otherwise it screws everything up for them.
Yes, which is what we're seeing now with the Great Resignation. People aren't in their spots, and it's screwing everything up.
Yep.
Organizations have zero idea what to do because they can't find people to, stand in the widget spot anymore.
No.
It's really strange, and it's on every single level. Every level. It doesn't matter whether you are, if you're working retail or if you're in corporate America. Everybody's having a hard time finding people because
Absolutely.
they're just like, no, that my time is worth more.
Yeah, I have a client right now. They've been looking for an executive assistant for a while now. And they have a bunch of, people come in for it. And it's, it doesn't fit exactly what it's a seller's market, I guess it is, that, these candidates are coming in. And if it doesn't align completely 100% with what they're looking for, they are just like, no, I'm good. Thanks. Go.
And employers are like, what?
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah, everybody got smart. I think also part of it is the millennials in a good way, because
Yes.
I think that my perspective is the women ahead of us. I'm going to throw you in there, Gen Xers, right? The women
Oh,
ahead of
oh
us,
yeah, I'm definitely in there. I promise you.
the Gloria Steinems and all those, they were the ones that really like trailblazed. And then the Gen Xer generation, we were like, yeah, what they said, we're fine.
Yeah, we're
And we
good.
kind of just rode along in the coattails, and we didn't continue to blaze that path. And then the millennials came in and they were like, what is wrong with you people? Like, why are you taking this? Why do you, what, huh? And I look at him, I'm like, yeah, what she said.
Exactly.
Like, they're so much
Exactly.
braver than we were. I don't know why. I don't know if there's so much more resource out there now than there was when we were coming up in our careers, but they're so much braver than I ever was at that age. And I love it.
I've learned a lot from my 21-year-old daughter and her friends and some of the millennials that I have interviewed on my show, that they are fearless. And it makes me feel fearless because I'm like, you're 29 years old. And I mean, you haven't even had life kick you around for a while yet. And you're so brave. And I want to be like you when I grow up. And
I know, right?
I'm so inspired by these fearless women. And I mean, and that's actually one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about is that I promise you, there are so many women that are listening right now that are not happy with the roles that they're doing in their jobs or whatever they're fulfilling, and they have a dream. They've always had this dream that they've always wanted to do it. They are afraid because they have these responsibilities, and I have to take care of this, I have to take care of that, but there's this little burning inside of them that says you are worth so much more and you are made for more. So I'm curious as to what kind of message that you would have directly for them, those women that are hopeful entrepreneurs, because there's lots of them.
There are, and I honestly was not someone who thought that she would be an entrepreneur. But I think, there's the old saying that, done is better than perfect. Um, you know, I I had to take the leap. I think but in all fairness, the year before I was forced into my leap, I was doing kind of some of this stuff on the side. You're just as like a small side hustle. So I knew I had some kind of value out there in the market. And so if I were going to give someone advice for that, I would say to just, try it with the little side hustle thing. Like, just see if there's a need for what you're doing out there. And I almost guarantee you that there will be. It's finding your niche too, like finding, the more you can narrow that and be, when I first started out, I was just, I'm going to do this fractional CFO work. And then it was, I'll only work with female founders. And then it was, now I'll only work with female founders in the creative and social impact space and podcast production. Cause the broadcasting thing has to get in there somewhere.
Right.
And the more you narrow it, the more specialized you yourself get. So you bring more value to the table. And people are like, oh, she only works with, oh, you know what? And then there's that kind of like market thing that goes along with it where they're like, oh, she only works with creative agencies and social impact firms like us. She must be good because she's only working, rather than the broad, oh, I work with anybody. Yeah, make 1,000 widgets. I'm your girl, advise to the president. Yep, I'm your woman right here. But the more you are like focused on an ideal client avatar, an ideal niche that you want to work in, you get more specialized. And along with that comes just this natural assumption that you know what you're doing. I think.
Because the reality is there's only one unique you.
Yes.
And there's no one else that can do quite what you can. And full disclosure, I think I might have said this probably a year ago when I first started this show. I actually had this idea for a really long time. I bought a microphone and I stared at it for 6 months. No joke. I was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
what if it's not good? What if nobody listens to it? What if I sound like an idiot? And then finally I was like, well, so what? So what if nobody listens to it? So what if I sound like an idiot? And so what if it doesn't go anywhere? I should try it. I'll try it. What's the worst that could happen? Nothing.
I know.
So I did it. I did it, and I could never have imagined what has happened just because I was like, what have I got to lose?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's not usually a lot to lose, especially early on. I mean, unless you're going to do something where you have to buy like $100,000 worth of inventory and you don't know if you're going to sell it. That's a little bit, shit. You want to be a little more planned with that kind of thing. But anything else, especially like podcasts. I mean, my dad worked for NBC for 40 years. So I grew up in the whole broadcasting thing. Always wanted to be on air. And when podcasting came out, I was like, ooh, now I don't even have to like audition for anybody. Like I can just do it in my own house or whatever. But you're right. It's just you just have to. Well, not you're right. You waited 6 months. You should have just gotten out there and do it. I think.
Yes.
I think just push the fear aside just a little bit and give it a shot. If it doesn't work, all right, reboot. Try something else. The time's going to go by anyway. You might as well make use of it.
And, again, admittedly, I'm admitting a whole lot of stuff about myself. There are times that I battle imposter syndrome. Like, who do I think I am? And what do I think I'm doing? And the reality is that I think I'm being me, and I think that I'm trying to put something good out in the world, and nobody's doing it quite like me. So there's no imposter syndrome to be had there. However, I am a 50-year-old woman that is programmed with that in the back of my head. I think I came out of the factory like that. I think we all have it at our ages that you broke us out of the box and it was there. But I battle it back all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I just make sure that it doesn't overtake me.
Right. I belong to one of the communities I belong to is called The Upside. And Erin Halper is the woman that founded that. And she recently sent us mugs that say, and now I have it on my wall back here. It's like, no one is you, and that's your superpower. And I now have it on my shelf back here too, that I'm like, that's right. And that helps you squelch that little imposter syndrome, because you can't be an imposter of yourself.
No.
Right. No. You're the original. So
there's no two. And I am so glad that you have given that advice, because that is something that I've been trying to proclaim, that don't underestimate yourself. You're phenomenal. You're wonderful. You are brilliant. And I know that because it comes across all the time. All the time. I run into brilliant women in grocery stores, and there's no lack of them. No. And I'm so glad that you are in agreement and you're encouraging other women to do what sets their souls on fire.
Absolutely. Life is way too short. Way too short. And, between June of 19 and January of 21, I lost both my parents. And, they were in their 80s. Not that makes it any better, but, even that, I'm like, life is too short. If you start, waiting on making decisions, then you're just going to look backward and go, I should have done this like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never, just start.
Just start. And even if you think like, I'm like the way early end of the Gen Xer thing. And I could easily have said, no, I'm too old to start something new. This is just like, let me just go along and do what I've always done and toe the line. But no, it wasn't what I was meant to be doing. So
wouldn't you have been miserable? Too?
Yes.
You've done that?
100%.
Well, I want to pivot just for a little bit, just because I want to get this in before we run out of time. Holidays are coming, and I am starting my campaign again, like I did last year, in making sure that we support our small business owners. And if they're female-owned small businesses, all the better. So I wanted to put you on the spot and ask you, who are some of your favorite female-owned small businesses that the audience can go and look on their website and order something? Because I promise you, the big box stores do not need your money. They don't. The small businesses need your money because every dime you spend with them goes directly back into their families and into their communities. And that's what grows our economy. So what are some of your favorites that they can go and buy their gifts from them?
I have two that I'm thinking of right now that are two women that I've recently spoken to. One company is called Bundle and Joy, and it's not baby stuff; it's actually pet stuff. They're both pet stuff, actually. And I can't think of the website right now, but she's on Instagram as like Bundle X Joy. And then the other one is Doodle Couture. She's brand spanking new. And also it's luxury pet items. I don't know how I got on this pet thing in the last few weeks, but and she's also someone the great resignation. Both of them are. They both left corporate America. They got tired of all that and they went out on their own. And I don't normally work with product-based companies, but those are two that I have gotten to know recently, and they're both doing some really, really great things.
Well, we'll make sure that we get their handles from you and their websites. So then I can publish that so everybody can go check it out. And, who doesn't love a cute dog in a sweater? I mean, I happen to have two pit bulls and there's nothing
You put
cuter.
them in sweaters?
Oh, well, we put them in onesies. It's hilarious.
Oh my God.
It is the funniest thing you've ever seen. There's nothing cuter than a pit bull in pajamas. Nothing. Absolutely nothing cuter.
Oh my God, that's great.
And it makes me laugh. I mean, and let's face it. I mean, anything that makes you laugh is a good day.
And those pit bulls have those great smiles anyway, right? So
they're very expressive dogs. Yeah. Very expressive. So just picture this chubby little like hippo, because that's what they look like. They look like these chubby little hippos in pajamas, in onesies.
It's like one big head in a pajama.
Yes, it's hilarious. So I will make sure I get all of that from you so everybody can go and check those out.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I want to make sure that everybody knows how to get a hold of you, because we probably have some budding entrepreneurs out there, or we even have businesses that are right now starting up and they need your services. So how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, best way is I have my website, which is dkeast.com. I'm also on Instagram at dkeastassoc. And those are probably the two best places to get a hold of me. I am in the process of launching an online course that I'm hoping to have done by January 1 at the very latest. And that will be, it's basically on, financials and what you should know and how to utilize them and how to use that information for ratios and budgeting and pricing and things like that. So look for that on my website too, eventually by January 1.
January 1. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're a solopreneur, so it takes time.
It is so much work.
It is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. Dorothy, once again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and being so vulnerable with us. It is truly a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It was fantastic to be here. Great conversation.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for joining me this week. And we'll see you again next time. That's our show. I want to send a special thank you out to our guests for being so generous with their experiences and their stories, as well as our sponsors so they can allow us to continue to tell these stories. I also want to say a special, special thank you to all of you, this community that we have been building one person at a time so we can endeavor to change the world one interview at a time. I could not do any of this without your support, and for that, I am forever grateful. I look forward to doing this again, so we'll see you all next week.
is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.